Welcome to the amazing world.
Today we are going to learn about Russia's role in World War One. Background to World War One. If you look at this map, you can see that Germany, Austria and Italy formed a triple alliance. But this was formed much before the war began. On the other side, you have Russia, who has signed a treaty along with United Kingdom, that is Great Britain, and France too has signed an alliance with Great Britain, and Russia has signed a alliance with France. Now these three countries form a triple entity. This was a more friendly relationship that was seen between Russia, United Kingdom and France, whereas the alliance between Germany, Austria and Italy was more formal. Serbia, on the other hand, was a neutral power during the beginning of the war. What was the main cause of the war was that the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand by Siberia in Sarajevo on 28 June 1914. In the beginning, they were asked to make peace, but they did not make peace, and as a result, the war resulted in the main cause of the war, which began on 28 July 1914. As the war began, Austria and Serbia, the powers that joined Austria earlier, forming the Triple Alliance, was Germany and Italy, while Serbia was supported by Russia, Britain and France. But let us see how the two blocs were formed as the war began. We see Austria was supported by Germany to fight the war, along with the Ottoman Empire, who too joined Austria to fight the war on the side of Germany. Whereas Serbia was supported by Russia, Britain and France to fight the war. As the war went on, we see Italy went on the side of Serbia. Along with it came its neighbor, Romania, to join the war, and America also joined on their side later. But the names of the blocs formed on the side of Austria was called the Central Powers. Germany, Austria and Ottoman Empire formed the Central Powers, while Russia, Britain, France, Serbia, Romania and Italy formed the Allied Powers along with America. Now, if you look, Germany, Austria, Ottoman Empire are large empires during this period. So these large empires, Britain, Russia and France, were also large empires during this time. They had colonies all over the world, and as a result, they took help of the men in their colonies to fight these wars and also tax the people in their colonies. So as a result, we see it is called the First World War because it was not only fought inside Europe but even outside Europe. Let us understand what was the situation in Russia when the war began. Tsar Nicholas was very popular among the people as they wanted to fight the war against the Germans. But did that remain for a long period of time? No. The reason for that was that the Tsar did not consult the Duma, which was the conservatives, when it came to taking decisions and actions. The Duma was not consulted. This angered the conservatives. On the other hand, his wife, Zaina Alexander, was of German origin, and so he took her advice along with Rasputin, a monk who was a very poor advisor as per the conservatives. And as a result, the conservatives who were having anti-German sentiments increasing renamed St. Petersburg as Petrograd. As the war went on, even the Imperial Russian Army came to be known as the Russian steamroller because they left the loyalty and now supported the revolutionaries. As a result, by 1916, we see that the Tsar is losing popularity and the Russians are losing the war. Why was the popularity with the Tsar going down during the war? When we look at this map, we will understand why this popularity was going down. If you see this pink color is the Western Front of the war, while the green is called the Eastern Front. So actually the war was fought on two fronts because the Central Powers were in between, whereas the Allied powers were on two sides, Great Britain and France on one side, Italy on the same side, fighting against Germany, Austria, and the Ottoman Empire. While on the Eastern Front, we had Russia, Romania, and Serbia that fought down. The thing was that from 1914 to 1916, it was the Russian army that was losing battle against Germany and Austria. Now, what was the reason for this? Let us understand in the next slide. As I told you, what was the impact on Russia was that with the war fought on two fronts, we see that the Western Front fought along trenches, whereas the Eastern Front fought battles that marched into open spaces. And as a result, on the Eastern Front, that is towards Russia, you see the Russian army was losing more men than what was lost on the Western Front. And as a result, there were more casualties on the Eastern Front than on the Western Front. Apart from this, Germany took control of the Baltic Sea, and this too had an impact on Russia. The effect of Germany having control over the Baltic Sea was that the supplies of industrial goods and equipments were not reaching Russia, which had only few industries, and so industries were disintegrating more rapidly in Russia than elsewhere in Europe. Secondly, able-bodied men were called to fight the war. As we seen, there were more casualties on the Eastern Front, and so there were labor shortages, and small workshops were also not producing the essentials and so had to shut down. On the other hand, the prices of bread was increasing because by the winter of 1916, there were more supplies of grains going to the armed forces than into cities of Russia. Owing to the scarcity of bread and flour, there were riots at bread shops that was becoming more common by the end of 1916 and the beginning of 1917, which led to the revolution of 1917. To summarize, the assassination of Archduke Frank Ferdinand by Siberia on 28 June 1914 led to World War I between the Central Powers, that is Germany, Austria, and Turkey, which was the Ottoman Empire then, and the Allied Powers, Russia, France, Britain, Italy, and Romania, to join later in the war, including America. Tsarina Alexander had German origin, the wife of Tsar Nicholas II, and his advisor Rasputin, a monk, was considered a poor advisor by the people of Russia. The anti-German sentiments were growing high among the conservatives, and so they renamed St. Petersburg as Petrograd. The war was fought on two fronts: the Western Front, where armies fought from trenches, while on the Eastern Front, armies marched and fought battles, leading to more casualties on the Eastern Front than on the Western Front. The Russian armies lost battles in Austria and Germany. The Baltic Sea came under German control, and as a result, industries and industrial equipment disintegrated more rapidly in Russia than elsewhere in Europe. As able-bodied men were called for war, labor shortages and small workshops producing essentials were shut down. By the winter of 1916, we see that grains were supplied more to the army than for the people living in the cities, and as a result, there was scarcity of bread and flour, and so led to riots at bread shops. This was the situation of Russia by the end of 1916, which led to the revolution in 1917. Thank you and see you in the next video.